All right, so ready to dive in. We've got this article, right, sent in by a listener, and it's about digital images, which, sounds kind of basic at first, but trust me, this is going to be good.
Yeah.
This William L. Weaver, he really gets into the weeds on how these picture-perfect, those amazingly detailed photos we see everywhere, how they're actually made.
Yeah, it's funny. Most of us, myself included, we just point and shoot without giving a second thought to what's actually happening inside our cameras.
Totally.
Right.
But this Weaver guy, he's like a walking, talking encyclopedia of imaging science.
Yeah.
I mean, the article mentions chemistry, physics, even ultra-fast laser spectroscopy. Like, what?
Seriously, he really knows his stuff, and it shows. What I found most interesting was how he starts with this idea of those super precise images you see in scientific journals or whatever, the ones that look so perfect, almost too perfect.
Yeah, like from those computational fluid dynamics simulations, the CFD ones, they're always so smooth and detailed.
Exactly. So he starts there with that kind of image, and then he's like, hold on a minute, these things aren't as perfect as you think.
Well, I like where this is going. So, spill the tea. What's he saying? What are we missing?
Well, it all comes down to this thing called a CCD, a charge-coupled device. Basically, it's this grid of tiny little light detectors that make up the heart of your digital camera. Each one of those detectors is responsible for capturing the light that becomes a single pixel in your image.
Hold on, back up a sec. So you're telling me my camera is basically just a giant grid of, miniature light catchers. It's kind of wild when you think about it.
It is, and here's where it gets even more interesting. Each of those tiny detectors, those pixels, they all have their own, little quirks, right?
Quirks? What do you mean?
Think of it like a choir, right? You've got all these singers, and they're all supposed to be hitting the same note, but in reality, some are a little sharp, some are a little flat. You know what I mean?
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah.
So it's like we've got a choir of pixels, but instead of singing, they're capturing light.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all a little off-key.
Exactly. And that's where this whole idea of calibration comes in.
Calibration, like tuning a piano.
Kinda. It's like using auto-tune on your pixel choir to get everyone singing in perfect harmony. There's this process called flat fielding, where they basically shine a perfectly uniform light on the CCD and map out each pixel's individual quirks, how sensitive it is to light, how it responds to different colors, all of that. And then they use that data to correct every single image the CCD takes.
Whoa, hold up. So they're basically, measuring each pixel's off-key singing and then adjusting it in real time. That's some seriously impressive tech.
It is pretty amazing when you think about it. But, and this is a big but, even with all that calibration, there's still some uncertainty in the final image.
Uncertainty, you mean it's not actually a perfect representation of what the camera saw?
Exactly. It's like even the best auto-tune can't completely disguise a bad singer.
Right. Okay, now you've got me curious. How much uncertainty are we talking about here? Is it something you can actually see in the photo?
Well, that, my friend, is the million-dollar question, and that's what we'll unpack as we dig deeper into Weaver's insights.
Okay, so we've got these digital images, and we're seeing they're not, perfectly in tune with reality, right? There's this whole hidden layer of uncertainty going on at the pixel level. But how much uncertainty are we talking about? I mean, is my last vacation selfie going to suddenly transform into something totally different?
It's not quite like your photos are going to go all back to the future on you or anything, but it's more like, we shouldn't take the precision of these images for granted.
Okay, so you're saying there's always going to be a little wiggle room, a margin of error, just like with any measurement.
Exactly. Every measurement has its limits, and digital images are no different. But here's the thing. It's not like our photos come with a warning label, right? Hey, heads up, this image might contain traces of uncertainty, so it makes you wonder, what's the big deal? Why should we even care about this uncertainty if we can't even really see it?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like this hidden factor that's always there, lurking beneath the surface. It's kind of creepy when you think about it.
It is kind of creepy.
Yeah.
But think about it this way. We are absolutely bombarded with images every single day, right? On our phones, our computers, billboards, everywhere you look, there's an image vying for our attention. And it's easy to forget, with all that visual noise, that what we're seeing isn't always the whole picture. It's like that old saying, don't believe everything you see.
Oh, totally. It's like those perfectly posed and filtered Instagram photos, right?
Yeah.
They might look flawless on the surface, but they don't always show the messier, less than perfect reality behind the scenes.
Exactly. And it's not just about aesthetics or social media either. Think about images in, medicine, scientific research, even criminal justice, right? A tiny error in a medical scan, for example, that could have huge consequences.
Whoa, yeah, that's true. It makes you realize how important it is to at least acknowledge those limitations, even if we can't see them with the naked eye.
Yeah.
So what's the solution? Should we start putting warning labels on every photo? Like a little disclaimer? Caution may contain uncertainty.
Well, Weaver actually suggests some pretty cool ideas for actually visualizing the uncertainty within the image itself. Remember our off-key pixel choir analogy from earlier?
Yeah, those pitchy pixels.
Exactly. Imagine if those slightly off-key pixels, the ones with more uncertainty, were visually represented somehow, like maybe by blurring them slightly or shifting their color a bit.
So instead of seeing a flat image, it's like you'd be able to see which areas are more, iffy than others? That's a really neat concept. It'd be like a built-in trust-o-meter for our photos.
That's a great way to put it. And it could be incredibly valuable in those high-stakes fields we were talking about. Imagine a medical image where the areas of higher uncertainty were subtly highlighted. That could give doctors so much more information to work with when making diagnoses and planning treatments.
It's like adding another layer of information to the image, right?
Mm.
A way to show not just what we're seeing, but how much we should trust what we're seeing. So cool. But how would that even work, practically speaking? Would we need, like, special cameras or software to do that?
That's the really exciting part. It all comes down to how we interpret and represent the data that's already there. There are actually already techniques being developed to analyze images and identify areas of potential uncertainty. And as technology keeps evolving, who knows what kind of amazing visualization tools we might have at our fingertips in the future.
This is really making me rethink how I look at images.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're on the verge of a whole new era of visual literacy. We're not just passively looking at pictures anymore. We're engaging with them, questioning them, understanding their limitations.
Exactly. It's about cultivating that critical engagement, which is more important than ever these days, especially with the sheer volume of visual information coming at us constantly. We have to be able to tell the difference between what's real, what's manipulated, and what falls somewhere in between.
It's like we all need to put on our digital image detective hats and start looking for clues, right? Always question the evidence and remembering that even the most convincing photo doesn't always tell the whole story.
I love that analogy. And the more we understand the technology behind these images, the better equipped we'll be to navigate this increasingly complex visual landscape.
Yeah, it's wild how we started talking about these tiny little imperfections in pictures, and now we're like questioning reality itself. When did this deep dive get so philosophical?
It's funny how these things happen, right? But that's what I love about Weaver's work. He doesn't just like stay in his lane talking about the technical stuff. He's really making us think about the bigger picture.
Totally. And one of the most interesting things he said, I thought, was that, get this, uncertainty in images, it doesn't actually make them less valuable. It actually makes them more valuable. What? At first I was like, huh. How does that even make sense?
Yeah, it seems kind of counterintuitive, right? But think about it this way. When we accept that an image isn't some like perfect objective representation of reality, it forces us to engage with it on a different level. We start asking more questions like, okay, what information is this image actually conveying? What might be missing? What are the limitations here? We become more, I don't know, discerning viewers.
It's like the difference between just reading a headline, right, and actually taking the time to read the whole article, think about different perspectives, maybe even do a little fact-checking of your own.
Exactly. It's about moving from passive consumption to active engagement, which is so important in today's world, especially with how much visual information we're all constantly bombarded with, right?
Absolutely. It's like we all need to become like visual detectives or something, always looking for clues, questioning the evidence, trying to piece together the most accurate picture we can, even though we know it might not be 100% there.
That's a great way to put it. And honestly, this whole idea of being a visual detective, it goes way beyond just looking at photos, right? It's about approaching all information with that same critical eye, whether it's a news article, a scientific study, even just something you see on social media.
Totally. Always got to keep your BS detector turned on. So as we wrap up this deep dive into, well, the surprisingly complex world of digital images, what's the one big thing you hope our listeners take away from all this?
I think the biggest takeaway is pretty simple, but it's something we often forget. There's always more than meets the eye. Every image, every pixel tells a story. And the more we understand how those stories are being told, the limitations, the possibilities, well, that's how we become more informed, more engaged, and ultimately more empowered viewers, which is something we could all use a little more of these days, right?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
It's like Weaver's given us a whole new lens to look through, not just at digital images, but at the world around us. And who knows, maybe this whole awareness of imperfection, this acceptance that things aren't always what they seem, maybe that'll spark something new. you know? Maybe it'll lead to different ways of creating images, different ways of seeing.
I love that. It would be amazing to see artists and photographers really leaning into that uncertainty, that ambiguity. And, who knows what kind of incredible, thought-provoking work might come out of that. The possibilities are endless, really.
That is a very inspiring thought to end on. It's been awesome exploring all this with you. Thanks for nerding out with me on this one.
Anytime. This is my kind of deep dive.
And to everyone listening, thanks for coming along for the ride. Remember, knowledge is power, especially in today's world. So keep those brains engaged, keep those cameras clicking, and we'll catch you on the flip side.